Here we go. Good officially afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Riles. I am your division chair for the business professional division for the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce. I also happen to sit on the board. We want to welcome you to this business and professional seminar on building and managing an e-commerce business. I'm excited about this because I want to dominate. I want to be the next Amazon, and Christina and Michelle are going to teach me how to do that. So they didn't know that until I just said it. That is not in the script, by the way, if I'm making jokes. But I just want to commend our Fort Bend Chamber for putting these on. Carrie always makes the joke that we're doing this once a month. They asked me to host these once a month, and now we've been doing them for about 12 weeks, every other week or so. So we've been bringing really good content to you, and hopefully you're enjoying it. I also want to remind you that Fort Bend Chamber is the only 5-star accredited chamber in the greater Houston area. So you are logging on to an expert chamber with expert guests today. So before I introduce the speakers, I just want to remind you that we are monitoring the chat. And so if you have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat, either in those that are on Zoom, or if you're on Facebook Live as well. If you're on Facebook Live, we ask that you participate with us with any questions or comments, and our chamber staff will get those to our speakers and to ourselves so we can ask those. So please feel free to push the chat button or the Q&A button if you are in the app. The other thing I'll ask for those of you that are on the app and Facebook Live, we'd like to know who we're talking to. So if you could put your answer the question of basically where you're from and what your business is, just so we can kind of tailor some of the answers and some of the presentation towards you, that would be great. So if you could just say, hey, I'm Kevin, I'm a commercial real estate broker, that's what I do. And any questions that you may have up at the beginning, that'll kind of help us guide our discussion. So with that being said, let me introduce our two speakers today. We have Christina Hawkins and Michelle Barton. Christina Hawkins owns Global Specs Incorporated and has more than 20 years of results-oriented, as a results-oriented digital marketer, project manager, and web designer. She has a small team that works with B2B companies, building website platforms and e-commerce solutions, while building lead generation systems. She is the lead organizer for the Houston WordPress Meetup, as well as the 2021 Houston Word Camp. She's also a coach with WordPress Elevation, which helps other digital freelancers grow their businesses. And we also have Michelle Barton, who grew up in an ice cream family and was this passion for ice cream with the industry was planted at an early age. Her very first job at 15 was working as a wholesale depot selling ice cream novelties to vendors in Seattle, Washington. Ice cream was something that her dad, Mike Johnson, and she always talked about. He was a mentor and taught her many valuable lessons that she carries with her today. When she's not working, her and her husband, Bobby, are spending time playing and being silly with their 2 young boys. She loves to travel, but lately staycations are the best. Amen to that. Without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Christina and Michelle.
Hello. So I just going to start off real quick. I'm going to talk a little bit about developing your site and how, just the kind of the back end side. And when people come to me saying, I want an e-commerce site, the kinds of things that we ask and the kinds of things to consider before you start an e-commerce store, as well as just kind of the differences and things to kind of think outside the box when it comes to e-commerce. It's not just t-shirts and hats and things like that. There's so much more you can do with it. And Michelle is going to talk from the other perspective of an owner, from her side of things as it comes to managing a store that's online, managing the accounting, managing the shipping and the delivery and all that comes with it from her perspective. So rather than just me talk all geeky talk, Michelle can get really, her view on the struggles of running an e-commerce store. So, but yeah, we'll go to the next slide. There we go. So one of the things I want to dispel, the myth that I want to dispel, is you put up an e-commerce site and the money just starts rolling in. That is just not the case. E-commerce takes a lot of work. E-commerce takes a lot of build-up and planning before you start a store. And then on the flip side, there's a lot to manage a store, as well as marketing the store, making sure that people actually find your store. So next slide. So just building an e-commerce store, keep going to the next one. Research. One of the things you want to make sure before you start any kind of ability to sell your product or services online is essentially what I'm talking about here, where somebody literally gives you their credit card through a cart system. That's e-commerce. And before you start that process, think about what it is you're selling and if it's conducive to an e-commerce platform. It can be a product, but it can also be a service. Like Michelle has a service where she sells her ice cream packages and her carts, and she has trucks. So you can go to her website and order an ice cream package with all kinds of options. You can add servers. And this was a way for her to get what she does out there online. But I think, and Michelle, tell me if I'm wrong, it also helped on the back end of fielding phone calls. An order comes through. Not that that's the easy part, that's the easy part, and then the after part, but research what it is that you want to sell and is it conducive. So I've had some people come to me, they want to sell, oh gosh, they want to sell some products online that they purchased from another store. Like, you know, there was a big discount store. So he wants to sell what he bought on discount online. He thinks he's going to make money this way. That's not going to happen. It's just, you're not going to make enough money, and you're not going to make an investment wise to even sell something like that. The other side to this is not only selling a product, but thinking outside, that this doesn't have to be consumer only. You can have an e-commerce store that sells to other businesses. We're working right now with a company that sells to utility inspectors. And so folks that kind of go around looking for utility lines, they sell products to them. And for a while it was just a catalog that we built. But now it's to the point where we're converting that to a true e-commerce store. She does not sell to consumers. She sells to other utility owners in the Houston, Texas area. Another idea is another company here that does refrigeration services. So they're thinking about selling their maintenance plan online so that a recurring income starts to kick in. They can sell that maintenance plan on a monthly basis or an annual basis. And that's another type of e-commerce to consider, that people can order this plan and every year you just charge their card. It's a great recurring revenue stream. Again, this is a B2B company. So do your research. Not only is it viable, but maybe thinking, wow, I can probably put that on my website and sell. The other thing is, what are you going to sell, and making sure you have a assistant, you know, what it is you're going to sell, and making sure you understand your customers and why they should buy from you, and having that story about, you know, before you just put it out there, think about what your customers are actually looking for. Is that something that they're going to do? Next slide.
Christina,
Yes.
real quick question for those. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michelle. Go ahead.
Oh, mine might take longer. So if you want to go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for a lot of times, since I'm in professional services, commercial real estate, you know, do with a lot of attorneys and other brokers. My e-commerce is more, you know, looking at our listings on our website. But I always assume that professional service companies don't think that they can use e-commerce as a mechanism on their website. And I always think, well, you know, if you have a book, or if you have a guide or something of that nature, you could do the same thing. I just was curious if you've ever worked with a professional services company that doesn't have a tangible product per se in the e-commerce space.
Yeah, it could be courses. It could be, you know, there's all kinds of things that like for me, I sell care plans on my website. So again, that's that reoccurring revenue. It's a service. Or there's other, I'm just sort of thinking, courses are kind of the bigger area
Right.
when it comes to e-commerce. I'm trying to think some other services that I've done for folks. Event management, but usually they kind of use other tools for that, but people have created websites to sell an event and get a ticket for a webinar or something. So yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to interject on the research part. Like when we started, I sell to customers and to businesses, so it's twofold. But when we started, my ice cream catering system was super complex, and I just to get started on the e-commerce site, I dialed it back and I really put it in a box and said, let's start with this first, and let's not add the 19 layers of complexity that I have to my system. And we started with, okay, this is one package that we can sell to the customer. These are their only options. This is the checkout process and that's it. And we built upon that to the system that I had. And I did, I was nervous in the beginning, like I'm going to lose business because we offer, a much more robust service if you call me. But online, I said, just to get started, let's start with these 5 or 6 packages, give them a limit, an option of A, B, or C, and that's it. With, like a small, medium, large package, for example, with a number of people being served, quantities for the push carts. And then we added, Sunday parties to that, and we added ice cream trucks. So it took, as things progressed and we got all the kind of the fine tuning of the e-commerce system, we could get into the like super hyper details of the program.
I think that's an awesome point, because sometimes people feel like they have to jump in full force, like it's all or nothing. And I think what Michelle is an absolute perfect point is just start with the basics, get something out there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but proof of concept. Before investing thousands and thousands of dollars, put something out there that you think, if somebody purchases this, then that might be a proof of concept, and I can invest a little bit more money and do more and make it more complex. But yeah, it's an amazing point. Yeah. All right. So the platform, so many platforms out there. There's WooCommerce is the one that I use. There's Shopify, Magento, BigCommerce, and that's just a short list. And so before you decide on any kind of e-commerce platform, do your research. Just find out the pros and cons of each one of them. Shopify and BigCommerce are typically hosted within their platforms. So they make it very easy to just create an account and start selling right away. But at the flip side, they take a percentage of your sales. So just know that. They also it can be a little hard to customize and do it exactly as you want it to work. I know BigCommerce, I've looked into that one. I've had developers look into it, and it's probably, from a cost standpoint, probably about 2 to 3 times more than you would with WooCommerce, even though BigCommerce, everything's kind of built into it. It's just, again, they take a percentage of your sales. So just, again, pros and cons of things. I'm not saying pick a tool, pick this one, it's better. It's just from your business perspective and what you feel would be an easier investment or an easier way of managing it, kind of do your research. Shopify is really popular too. Again, it's something you just set up pretty quickly. WooCommerce, on the flip side, I think I prefer WooCommerce just because I'm in a WordPress space, but it allows me way more customizations, and there's just so many options when it comes to plugins and extensions that I can find. And then the third reason is you can just trip over a WordPress developer in the US. There's just so many of us, and with all varying skills. And I think even with any of these, just like Michelle was saying, just start off simple, get your proof of concept, and then kind of grow from there. But yeah, so just kind of do a little research on that platform. Next slide. Design, branding, and UX stands for user interface. And Michelle can absolutely attest to this. She is always all about how the users use her website. She's constantly looking at, does this make sense? My customers might get confused if we do it this way. We just had this conversation yesterday about the process that we have now, and maybe tweaking that. But your branding and the design of your site will have an impact. So just if you start going down this path, think about that. Think about what your messaging. And Michelle actually just went through this, a couple months ago? You did a whole huge rebranding, total messaging, a whole new session. Just, it just helps when it comes to your website. It's part of the colors, the logo, what you say, products. Huge impact is your product photos. I can't stress enough. If you're going to have an online store, if it's product based, spend a little bit of money on the right photos for either, if it's just a product itself, absolutely. And, if it's a service, if you can have photos of in action, if it's, I think in Michelle's case, event, she'll be at an event. And so she spent some time getting a photographer coming out and took pictures of them serving ice cream and pictures of the ice cream truck. So those are all super important. So think about the design, think about your branding. And then the third is your user interface. How are people walking through that purchase process? And this is just something that's, honestly, this is something you always have to be looking at. So no matter how long you've had your store, if you've never touched it and looked at it again, you are throwing money away. You need to be very proactive and looking at your statistics and looking how people are going through your website. Does it make sense? Are people dropping off in certain places? Are they getting the cart and dropping? There might be a problem with the cart. If people are at the checkout, are people dropping at the checkout? What's happening on the checkout page? So those are things you really have to know as you're building out. But then again, like Michelle said, you just have to kind of get something done and then just iterate as you move along. So design and brand.
We had a couple of questions pop up from Facebook. What about Wix, W-I-X?
Wix, to me, I've not seen a Wix store. I've not used that.
Right.
Again, that's a research thing. It sounds like, Wix again is a platform that you are on the Wix platform. So just
right.
like Shopify and some of these others, it's probably a tool that you can probably sell one or two things, not which is fine. But your ability to customize that is probably pretty limited. You can probably find a Wix developer somewhere if you need to do that. But I think, again, if Wix has that capability and you just have a book to sell or an event to sell, I think it's fine. But if you have a much more complicated store, then I would maybe do a little bit more research on that.
Then Teresa asks, are there resources that you recommend when doing research and choosing an e-commerce platform?
Is that a blog post I have to write? I don't have anything off the top of my head. I'll look for it. I'll see if I can find a good resource for everybody, and I'll share that with the chamber, and they can post that on video. But yeah, it looks like I have a blog post.
We always put these videos on our business and professional, so we are recording this today, so we can add that to the show notes. I wanted to ask you as well, my own website is a WordPress website for our commercial real estate firm, and when you talk about WooCommerce or just plugins for WordPress, I'm always concerned about security. So I just wanted to could you speak to, WordPress plugins can be great, but then sometimes they can kind of be backdoors to other stuff.
Yep.
So I just wanted you to speak to that possibly as well.
I think it's in my presentation. I think it's
okay. I'm sorry.
Later. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
If we don't, then we'll definitely come back to that because that's a huge issue. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
the next thing,
I wanted to interject real quick, I do spend time going through and making sure that the user has a friendly experience. And I think you do have to manage it continuously. But, if I didn't have, Christine to help me with that. So I think having a business or someone that you're paying to help facilitate some of those, plugins and some of the more technical things that I don't necessarily have time to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I'm running my business and I'm also, making sure that everything is working smooth. But as far as, monitoring when a customer gets to the shopping cart and drops off, those are things that are just really above my pay grade, and I can't handle those on a day-to-day basis. So, I highly recommend, if that's not your expertise, to let somebody professional handle it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. The next slide. Your product spreadsheet. So this is the part when I'm working with business owners that we get stuck on. But at the same time, it's a really great way of finding out what it is that you're actually selling. And so some people start off, again, with the utility company, I don't know, they must have 100 products. But when we first started, they didn't have any inventory system. So the spreadsheet forced them to do that. It did the same thing with another oil and gas company. Again, outside the box here, an oil and gas company has an e-commerce store. They sell $15,000 products. So this is just think of that. You don't have to sell, small items. These can be large products. So anyway, I digress. So the product spreadsheet kind of forces you to figure out, what is the product I'm selling? How much am I selling it for? What are the weights and the dimensions? Because you have to think about shipping. Or, if you've got large $15,000 projects that, actually take a crane, probably don't need to worry about the weight, but you want to incorporate if there's any add-ons or what do I call them? Attributes. So attributes are like small, medium, large, or if certain software you have to add to the product, and you have little drop downs. So you have to make sure all of this is documented out. You can start with just 5 products, right? Just to get something out there and then start adding. But if you're starting out with 100, 500, 2,000 products, you need a product spreadsheet. So before you start looking out for a developer, and I actually have a template that I can share, that you need to put this together. You need to talk with your developer and say, okay, I've got 45 products, because you counted it out. And I know I've prepped for all this. I know what the prices are and the weights and all that. Your developer will love you for it. The flip side then is tying in the product image with the product itself. If you've got hundreds and thousands products and you just have a folder full of images, you have to tie in one-to-one to one-to-one. So if you can put the name of that inside the product spreadsheet, then your developer knows, okay, which product goes with what. Then I think that's the other side of this, is just collecting your photos. So just getting all your product information together into a single location. And I'm trying to think, what else do we have? We have attributes, weights, prices. If you're going to do any sales, if you're going to have discounts, you can put a sales price in there. A product description is really important. So not just this is a t-shirt, 100% cotton, rah. Think about the REM sites where they actually put yourself in the t-shirt itself. If you're selling large equipment or you're selling ice cream, you're selling an experience. So the product kind of talks about why the event's going to be fun, why it's going to save you time, and Michelle kind of sells to other companies that have corporate parties. So, your staff's going to love it. They're going to love you. It's great for a good feel. And we take care of everything. We have servers. We show up on time. All those things kind of help sell the product. So a product description is really, really important. Imagery. I'm trying to think, what else am I missing, Michelle?
Are you going to talk about services? Because I have something just to kind of add that's really relevant to current times. Like, for example, I sell an ice cream catering service. There's product, obviously, but there's also a service involved. And with COVID right now, there's really not large groups gathering, and it's very challenging. We actually just did an event where we modified a cart with like a plexiglass screen that came up, in front of the server. We're actually not offering servers, but we said we can deliver this cart to you with ice cream, and you can have someone from your team pass it out with, gave them a mask, and they can hand out the ice cream and, social distance and set up their own, procedures that work in their space. But we're modifying things, and that's also super critical to keep your website, sort of up to date. And that's kind of what I'm going through right now. I just had a videography shoot last week where I literally had to take double shots, one with a mask and gloves and one without, because I don't know what the future is going to be like. And I need to have that because that could be our new norm for going forward. So I need to also be able to solicit that service and what we're doing in light of COVID.
Oh God, that's so true. Yeah, video is fantastic if you're trying to sell a product or a service. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I think also you pivoted. We created a simple form. Like we had a full e-commerce store set up for the events, but your idea was to pivot, and you just had. We created an e-commerce form. We couldn't use the store because we had so much complexity on delivery and pickup and drop-offs. The form then was for the ice cream package that you were delivering or you could pick up. And it was just in the Sugarland area, and you could order this big bag of ice cream and toppings. And it was just really great while everybody was, at home.
You were our best customer.
I know. My kids still ask me, Mom, can we order the fast food?
I'm starting to feel like we should have done samples before this webinar. Michelle, I'm feeling some kind of way about that. So
next time.
Next time. Okay, all right.
All have our little cups of Southern ice cream.
Exactly, so we can be like, yeah, so tell me more.
Right.
Yeah, we ordered a few times. I've got 2 kids, so that was like every Friday night, you're like, Mom. So, but I think that was just a great way of just, again, but it makes a good point, was the form. We have a Gravity form that kind of does the same thing. You can just order, and it's tied in to her merchant, which is Stripe. So, all right, which leads me into the next slide, which is payment systems. I'm not going to go in a whole bunch of detail about this. Before you start your store, figure out who's going to manage the credit card. And there's so many of them. I prefer Stripe because it's super easy to connect. All the money goes straight to your checking account within a day or two. And Stripe actually is a free plugin to WooCommerce, so I don't have to buy another extension for it. It's really great. But yeah, I think it also allows for reoccurring. So if you've got anything that you want to sell, like I talked about in the maintenance packages, Stripe allows you to have reoccurring revenue on that. But
they charge you a percentage.
They do, yeah. They all do actually between 2.5% to 3.5%, or 3.7 maybe. But there's no monthly fee, and there's no annual fee. That's another reason why I like them. Authorize.net, First Data, those are all, they charge you probably $20 a month, plus probably $100 a year. But PayPal and Stripe, I believe, don't have any fees. Square, I'm not sure of. But on the flip side, you don't always have to have a credit card. You could do purchase orders. So, people can actually go to the cart and they not actually exchange money, but you have a purchase order or a call for quote. So if you've got larger items or things that maybe you don't have in inventory, you can set it up as a call for quote.
I actually had, originally, I had my merchant service company. They had some code or something where we tied it in for. So if you have a merchant service company that you're really comfortable with, that you want to stay with, contact them and your web developer and see if you can sync the 2 of those. That way you don't have to have another platform or another service. I also, for the home deliveries, I do use Stripe and PayPal, and I always offer PayPal as an option because it's super easy for the consumer if they have all of their information saved, and they can just do it on the fly wherever they are. So I definitely I like that service, at least available. And then I did use Stripe for my kind of on the fly COVID form that we did because it's a little bit different. So, but just wanted to add that tidbit that you don't have to go with this service if you're happy with your merchant service company.
Yeah, most of those banks, usually they're using Authorize.net as the gateway, and that's what it's called, a gateway. That's what we're looking for. So even most companies now, if they're using any merchant for accepting credit cards, typically uses Authorize.net. But I think, Michelle, yours was something that was totally different. Yeah, it was special. So, all right, next one. And shipping and delivery. So how are you going to ship the product? Are you going to deliver the product? So are you going to use UPS, USPS, FedEx? Michelle has delivery zones. So depending on where you are from a central point and out, we did it by zip code. So certain zip codes, and you go out further and it adds a delivery fee. You go further out, it adds another delivery fee. So, but that's something to consider too. We've got a company up in Seattle that does photography equipment, but he only delivers within Seattle and Oregon. That's it. Oregon. those two states, that's it. And if you order anywhere else, then it's a FedEx shipping fee, which is obviously more expensive. But that's, that's to consider too. Not only that, Michelle talked to this is when it's her turn is at the other end. How are you going to make sure that you actually are packaging it, delivering it, getting it out, talking with your customers? Next slide. Anything else, Michelle?
No.
Next slide. Security and maintenance. This is a biggie. This is just what we were just talking about earlier. If you have any store, WooCommerce, WordPress, probably more so than anything else, because WordPress powers more than 35% of the internet right now. So everybody and their mother is trying to figure out how to get into a WordPress site. So security is huge. If you pick a plugin, and this is what we were talking about, if you have a plugin that you found, kind of look at the support. How often are they responding? When was the last time it was updated? For me, if I'm using an e-commerce store with WooCommerce, the platform, I try and stick with the WooCommerce plugins. I have used other plugins, but they're typically companies that I know well enough. They've been in business long enough. So just kind of watch it a little bit. If a programmer decides to abandon a plugin, if it's in the WordPress repository, you're okay. WordPress will let you know. If not, you may not ever know that this thing hasn't been touched in 3 years. And so you kind of have to monitor that a little bit. Michelle pays us to do that for her. We update, we back up. And if you have a store, back up. Gosh, I think with yours, we back up every 12 hours now. We back up all the time. And it's an off-site as well. Then we're also making sure that we've put systems in place that we're blocking folks from certain countries like China. If you're in China, you don't need to be going to Southern Ice Cream. There's no reason for you to be in Southern Ice Cream. If you're in Russia, you don't need to be in Southern. I've blocked countries completely. So I don't have to kind of mess with that, but we still have other systems in place to make sure we just don't get those nasty bad actors who are just trying everything they can to get in there. But plugins, updates, backing up, update WordPress when it comes out. Maintenance is what we talked about earlier, is just keeping your site updated is really important. So always being in your site, adding content, changing content, updating content. That's what, if you want to talk a little bit past search engine optimization, how people find your store and what Google's looking for, is a website that's active. But maintenance is, you can't just have your store and step away. That's kind of my point. Kind of like, oh, I'm done. Money rolls in now. So that's that. And then next, I think, is her turn, managing a store on her side.
Well, we've definitely gone through the trials of what works and what doesn't work. And like I said, we've added on, we've built onto it. So I have it's the same through my website, but it's basically 2 e-commerce processes. One is for our ice cream catering. So it's very extensive because we deliver equipment and then we go back and we pick up equipment. We have after hours charges and out of area distance charges. Sorry, my phone's, we have out of area charges that, are outside of our normal distribution, but we will go there, but we charge you like $50 or $100 or depending on where it is. And that's something that Christine has helped us with, tremendously with the zip codes and all of those things. As far as getting the orders, when they come in, they go to our emails. We have several CSRs, customer service representatives, that take those orders and they print them out or process them, enter them into our inventory system, and then get them ready for the delivery. And then we also have, so our other e-commerce process is what we created for COVID was more of a home delivery kit for ice cream for a smaller party of like five or less. And that is a much more simple form. You can go through, you just buy it and it gets delivered later that day or the next day. And our delivery drivers are just dropping it off. They're not going back and picking it up. So we have processes and order forms for those so that we can communicate to our delivery drivers so they know what to, pull and pack and how to manage the delivery. And did you have any questions specifically, Christine, that you were looking for?
We had other things about managing the accounting and marketing your store, I think were the other topics in there. If you want to go to the next slide, I think I had I have shipping. So, packing and shipping, but I think you just talked about that, was making sure that everything gets put together. I think you already did that. Managing the accounting side of things was the other side that kind of is a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, because like with the catering side, we have that tied into our merchant service that we use for our wholesale business. So that is really seamless and probably the easiest. With the newer process that we do, everything's paid online. So if the customer goes, we get their credit card information and it's paid before the product ever leaves the building. So that's the great part. You don't have to chase money. So if you set up your e-commerce correctly, but with the home delivery drops that we do, that process, I actually use Stripes and PayPal, and PayPal is an option for both of them. So really a good program to use because I think it's just popular and people have it already set up. Just log into PayPal, once a week or whatever, and you can upload your credit card charges and balance your books that way. So it's very simple to use. We have, kind of internal processes where when we get those orders, it kind of goes from step A to, D or whatever, how to get everything ready for the consumer, but it's already paid for. So that's a positive.
Yeah, I think another side to think of this when it comes to the accounting of e-commerce is, I know with some of my customers, it's not only about selling the product, but it was a way to help manage accounts receivable. So again, back with the a cooling company, a maintenance agreement, if we have it set up as a reoccurring charge every year, it can, you can have an accounts receivable of $50,000, but once you set this in place, your accounts receivables can drop down significantly because, like Michelle said, you're not chasing people. It gets paid for every month automatically. Stripe, another reason why I like Stripe is if it doesn't charge on the first of the month, let's just say the first of the month is when you have it set up, if it doesn't get charged, it will try again the next day, a second day, a third day, and then and this is all telling them that their card was declined. And usually because you have it on the first, they just haven't paid their credit card bill yet, right? And it just kind of maxed out. So it'll try two, three times, and then it'll kick in again. On the back end, it looks like it'll pause the account or the subscription, and it'll tell you, hey, we tried 3 times, it didn't work. And that's really the only time you have to have your bookkeeper or accountant kind of call up and say, hey, we need your credit card, or whatever that case may be. Mostly they changed credit cards and we had to get a new card. But I think from an accounting standpoint, your accounts receivables will absolutely, it helps with that. So next slide. And Michelle, marketing your store, I think, is one of the bigger topics that people tend to forget. And Michelle's done a great job.
For marketing, we've used Google AdWords. We have really high organic searches, which is good. And I think that's because we keep our web content relevant and fresh. We're constantly changing it. Just going in and changing a sentence or two or adding something makes a huge difference in the organic searches for your website. And then also creating separate pages that are specific to the content that's on that page, instead of having like everything on your homepage, actually, dissecting it out. And Christina is really more of an expert in that, but I've learned a lot over the years. And I think that, SEO and Google AdWords marketing is very helpful, as well as coupled with organic searches that you're going to, by keeping your content relevant. And we're definitely trying with social media. I think that's really more of our struggle. We have social media and we're doing it, but I don't think we get as much traction there as we should. But we're also not paying for content management at this current time. So that's something that we're looking into as we're recognizing seeing that it is very inexpensive to get into, and I think it'll have a lot of payoff in the long term. So yeah, marketing is definitely something that you need to do. You need to get people to your website. And then when they get there, it needs to be what they're looking for. So just put yourself in the customer's shoes of what you would be searching for if you were looking for this service. And sometimes, you're so deep in your own business that you think of all these technical words. Ask some random person, that a friend or somebody that's not directly tied to your business, what they would search for, because I think that's going to give you more authentic keywords. That's all I know at the moment.
No, that's awesome. That's exactly it. Yeah, I think that's the one thing people forget. They spend a lot of money and a lot of time building the store, but they forget after the store is built, it's not done. You aren't done. You now have to get people to the store. And even if you've had the website up for a long time and people already know you exist, in order to make sure the investment pays off, is you got to put some time, definitely, and maybe money into getting people to the store. So
we did a really good session with Tristan Sutton on Facebook marketing that people can go to the business and professional page and look at. But the combination of that and what you and Michelle are talking about, as far as if you build it, they won't come. You have to tell them where it is. And it's specifically in Facebook marketing, being able to get down to the nth level data of who your target market is, I think is significant, especially for a business like, for instance, Michelle, or some type of product. I can't tell you how many things I've purchased straight off of Facebook, especially since they turned the ads that look like, kind of look like postings. I can't tell you how many t-shirts causes to the point where I was like, I need to find one of those websites that allows you to print on demand t-shirts and just open up my own t-shirt place.
Yeah.
But adding, Michelle talking about adding social media to your marketing mix, I think is important because of the data that they have on us.
Mm-hmm. Kind of scary, but yes.
It is kind of scary. No, you're right. It is scary, but if you want,
it is what it is, though.
If you want men 55 to 57 that live in Fort Bend County that like golf, I mean, you can get that specific. So and maybe too specific, but I just think that's a good combination of what we're talking about. Yeah.
You're right. The demographic, they can really narrow it down by, geofences and demographics, and it's super inexpensive.
It is
something that we forget with social media is there's a lot of people on it. It's inexpensive, and we also can do companies can do redirects. So like if someone does click on your website from social media or from something, they can actually have these little pop-up ads, come back on their computer when they're looking at something else and they forgot, that they were searching for somebody's birthday party, event idea that they were like, oh, I forgot I was supposed to do that. So those are really good tricks that help with the marketing that you can pay for that are not super expensive. I mean, and if you give, a marketing person your budget of, I want to spend X amount of dollars, per month, they can really do a lot with that.
Yeah, we use it's display advertising on other people's websites, and then we retarget. So if somebody's been to Michelle's site, then the little cookie drops, and now if they go to another site that's somewhat relevant, their ad starts showing up. Just like you're saying, it just like, oh, that's right. Oh, God bless, I meant to finish the But we also have a tool that if they provided their email at some point in the checkout process and they abandon the cart, we actually send them an email that says, hey, remember this cart that you started? Sure you don't want to finish? So it's a great tool.
So we have a question, Michelle, to you. It says, what was your biggest struggle or obstacle when you launched your e-commerce business? This is from Teresa.
The biggest was, I think it's twofold, but I'd say making the user experience seamless. And, so what I don't like is having a customer call and say, you know, I'm at the checkout page and it's just spinning and spinning and it's not working, right? Like I can't finish my event booking because something's not working within the system, whether it's my payment transaction process, which we had recently with, you know, trying to get Stripe set up, you know, it was just spinning and spinning. And those are things that, you know, I like to be aware of so that I can fix them. And, you know, people thankfully call me. But that's the biggest challenge, is just making sure everything works correctly. We're always seeing things that, you know, come in and it's like, well, you know, for example, we had a ice cream truck event, which is just an after hours. It's charging because it's requiring them to select a pickup or a drop off and a pickup time, which is not applicable to that type of event. They are putting in 2 times that are after hours, and they're getting charged twice. So they're gonna abandon that because it's way more than they were quoted or what it should be. So those are just little key. I mean, you have to just stay on top of it, communicate with your customers. We have like a banner on our website where we can put, you know, please work with us. Our website, our e-commerce site is new. You know, we're testing things still. So please let us know if you have any issues. I don't know. There's always ways to communicate to people so that, you know, you don't lose their business or, you know, lose their, respect's not the right word, but, you know, lose the rapport.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm on your website now. So first and foremost, I'm hungry. So that does not help. But to your point, you have a COVID banner across the front of your website, just kind of, you know, giving everybody a heads up of your hours and what's going on and things of that nature. So, you know, to your point, it's just far as thinking about what the consumer is thinking.
Yeah, and that's really easy to use for us just because it's a quick thing. I don't have to go into 5 different places when it changes to change it on the website. I'm just giving everyone like a heads up, like, hey, you know, due to COVID, you know, our business hours changed. We're not doing servers with our events. Like, these are just small things that we've changed, or like big things, but, you know, just in the interim, it's not necessarily forever. And then I don't have to take the time to go to 5 different pages and update, you know, all the content. It's just sort of a bulletin board, you know, for the current time.
Yeah, one of the things that Christina said earlier that I think every business should have, regardless of e-commerce or not, is kind of what I call the regular consumer committee. And my wife is the head of that committee, and meaning that I'm so immersed in what I do that I think it messes myself up as far as thinking like who's on the other side of this computer or who's on the other side of this transaction. So if I test it with her and she responds, or if I test it with her or some of her friends and they don't respond or have comments, then I think that's important. And especially I would assume in e-commerce, as you mentioned earlier, Christina, having some friends just go through the process and things of that nature to get comments because they're the regular consumer committee and we're too close to it.
Yes.
But also there's a website called Hotjar that you can watch people actually using your website. It'll record users that have come to your site, and you can see where their mouse is going, and you can see if they scroll past certain things. So it's a great tool to kind of get that other third party, you know, people actually on your site, what they're, you know, that's been super helpful with a couple other sites that I'm on. So
I have to use that as well.
Yeah, hotjar.com. I think you can have 3 web pages for free.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right, guys. So for those of you out there, we're got about 5 minutes left, so we're taking questions. So if you have any questions, feel free either on Facebook Live or our Zoom webinar software to post a question either in the Q&A or in the chat. In the meantime, we had some advanced questions as well. And one of the things that I know people are always concerned about are taxes. And so either Michelle or Christina, how are you guys handling taxes, or how are taxes handled, especially if you're selling in different jurisdictions? How do y'all handle that?
On my end, if you're in the state of Texas, so you have an 8.25%. So it's kind of easy. If you're in Texas and you buy from Texas, and you add the sales tax. If you're outside, so if you sold to somebody outside of Texas, let's say Oklahoma, you have to put their sales tax in. Now, I'm not a sales tax expert. This is where I recommend people get with their CPA to find out what their tax laws are, because it's all different for every type of store and service. Even for web design, I have to charge sales tax, but it kind of depends. And so just ask your CPA about taxes. Michelle, what is yours do? I think yours is still sales tax, right?
Yeah, my
yours is complicated.
Yeah,
super complicated.
With food, it's a little bit, and sold in bulk, it's a little bit different. But yeah, we tax the product 8.25%. I do not sell out of state, so that makes it really easy. But then we actually have on our checkout process a place, because I sell to a lot of churches and community organizations that are nonprofits that have tax exempt certifications. We actually have a place for them to upload their tax exempt certificate and keep it. If they log in and they have an account with us, it keeps it on file, and then no tax is charged to that account. So that's something unique that we did that was kind of a workaround, trying to figure out, it's out of the box for most e-commerce sites. So if you do have a service or product that you're, have an exempt status for a certain type of customer, then there is that, opportunity to get some customization regarding, what are your legalities there. And agreed, you have to, I have to stay consistent with what we were doing previously. So whatever I did online had to match what, a consumer walking in the door would get. And so that's super important to make sure that, you don't want to get audited or have any red flags to why you have inconsistencies within your processes.
And does Shopify or WooCommerce, do they handle some of that for you, or is that all in the setup of their platforms? Do you guys know?
Yeah,
WooCommerce.
WooCommerce does have a way to do that. Shopify, I'm sure all of them do. It's just required now. It just depends on the complexity of your tax system and, what the laws are. That's why I'm always telling people, just get with your CPA. Don't depend on your developer to know the tax laws. Just don't. Just get it from them, and then deliver that to your developer and let them figure out how to do it.
Hey, one other quick question before we end here. I'm sure people are wondering, how what's the general cost of building an e-commerce store as far as startup is concerned? I know that can vary, but any guidance as it pertains to that as they're doing their research?
I think, like what Michelle was saying earlier, is starting off small first. I don't recommend thousands and thousands of dollars into building this huge e-commerce store without making sure that you've it's going to work. So start small. I think for us, we started about 5,000 just to build your store and set up your accounting or your payment system and your shipping system and your delivery, all that. That's a starting point. But we have done e-commerce forms, just a simple form where we attach it to Stripe and you order, and that that could be $1,000 to $2,000 just to have a simple form. There's no cart, there's no checkout system. It's just a form, So it kind of depends, and then it also depends on how many products are you trying to sell. If it's 20, that could be relatively easy, kind of put together, get the products, get the photography done. If you're talking, 500, 2,000, that's a whole other level of testing and adding the products. You can import, but the import's never perfect. So, there's just a lot of variables that are included in that. And then in Michelle's case, the complexity of the ordering system. How much does the developer have to go in and truly customize something and get into the back code and make it work for you, to make it work for your business? So again, it's all about the research. Do your homework and talk to not just one, maybe 3 developers, and kind of get, a sense of what their skills are and what they charge. But be upfront and tell them, these are the products, this is what I'm trying to sell, this is how I'm setting up shipping. And if you can have that information up front, you'll get a way better proposal and an estimate of cost. Michelle,
Yeah,
what do you think?
well, I was just going to speak on the part where, you know, in the beginning, I knew where I wanted to be because we were already doing that with our consumer, or we were, you know, had a very robust catering process. But to do the e-commerce, I kind of scaled it back and I said, okay, this is where we're going to start, but this is where I want to end up one day. And recently, within the last couple of years, we did a customize your own cart, which was really, you know, ultimately what we wanted. We wanted the consumer to go in and have control of what goes in that push cart, what ice creams are their favorite. If they wanted all vanilla sandwiches, they could do that now. Whereas in the beginning, I just started with like a variety pack. You know, these are our most popular items in a cart and you've got, you know, option for 150 people, you know, 300 people and 600 people or whatever. So it was like an A, B, and C option. There wasn't a way for them to add on. It was very limiting, but it gave me, I guess, just some experience with what was getting booked, what people wanted. And then we just gradually added on as I wanted to spend more money, you know, each year and make the program or the e-commerce site just that much more functional for the consumer. And there's still things that I'm constantly coming to Christina, like, can we do this? Or, you know, this isn't really working exactly how I envisioned it and we need to change it. But, you know, I think starting slowly and actually knowing where you want to be in the end through the whole process is good before you get started. Kind of just map it out in your mind, because if you start with the wrong base, you're gonna end up spending a lot more money in the long run. So I think having sort of a plan in place from this is where I want to start and this is where I want to end up in 5 years. This is the kind of system I want to have and this is what I want to be able to sell and etc. It'll save you money along the way to get there.
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'll end with, I just leased last year a warehouse to a fulfillment company that fulfills for online stores that people have. And so I know, Michelle, you handle your own fulfillment because I'm assuming you guys, you know, manufacture your own stuff there in Stafford. But I want to leave with any ideas or any comments as to just fulfilling orders you know, on an e-commerce site and solutions with that.
No, it's really, I think that once you get the email and the customer picks out what they want, you know, we put it into our system and it's very seamless. Like there's really no issue. Like I said, our orders get emailed to us to several customer service representatives. So they always, you know, there's a main one that's responsible for getting it. And then if they're out of the office or whatever, the next one knows who is responsible. For the home delivery kits, we have pop-ups that come on to the, you know, from Outlook that say, you know, you have a new order. And it's relatively, it fits seamlessly within our normal day-to-day businthere
Gotcha.
Yeah, if you're doing drop ship, if you've got a company that's actually fulfilling orders from you, there are extensions and ways to connect your store to those drop ships.
Right.
We built an e-commerce store for a local coffee company. It's a nonprofit, and we just switched them over to a subscription base. So every month you order your coffee and it gets delivered. But their coffee maker, the people that actually manufacture, create whatever the coffee, is here in Houston. So that order goes straight to that distribution center. So they get a copy of the order, the email, and it gives all the orders, what that person has ordered. Even the subscription stuff, every month that each one goes straight to the coffee company, and they just go off of that. There's other ways that we've thought about is putting it into a spreadsheet. I can create a system where every order is thrown into a spreadsheet, maybe a Google sheet. But most people just prefer email just because it's a nice tickler. It's just like do kind of a way of just kind of going through it. But yeah, there's ways that you can set it up so that whoever's doing the fulfillment, that'll work. You can do that.
Yeah, I just wanted people to know that they'll, you know, Amazon does fulfillment, but there are also small businesses that do fulfillment as well. So, you know, you don't have to have boxes in your garage and things of that nature. A lot of people I've seen people that I've taken from their house to, you know, small warehouses and did not know that they could do drop shipping. So
My God.
I wanted to remind them, you know, I'm sure everybody started, maybe Michelle and them started making ice cream at their house, but eventually you get to a point where you gotta, you know, get a spot and or do some type of drop ship. So any ending comments, guys? Nope. All right. I want to thank Michelle and Christina for being on with us today. As always, the information was great. We will have their contact information, how they prefer to be contacted, on our website within 48 hours with this video. Any show notes, I think Christina mentioned a website. I don't know if she mentioned hotjar.com, but there was something else that she was going to look up for someone. So we'll put that on the show notes for this particular webinar. And just so you guys that are out there, just to remind you, we have a couple of upcoming events tomorrow on June 25th. The Chamber Young Professional Division is hosting a funny evening of bingo and trivia via Zoom. This will start at 5:30 p.m. And then on Friday, we have the Education Division who will host our annual State of Higher Education via Zoom beginning at 11:30. That's something that we normally would do in a ballroom, but we're doing it via Zoom. And we hope that you will join us for those events. And again, if you want to know about any of our upcoming seminars, please feel free to go to FortBendChamber.com and look at our calendar of events. You can sign up. And again, we just appreciate you guys for joining us today and learning how to build and run an e-commerce store. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
All right, see you guys.